I guess if I have an idea, then they try to pair you with someone, and then you come up with a pitch. You sort of tell your show what it's about and who the characters are and what the stories will be and what sort of the arc of the show is and what you're trying to thematically, what you're trying to say, what you care about. And then you go into a room. Is this what you're asking?
Yeah.
And then you sort of go on this. I mean, this is traditionally how it works, right? You go on this sort of like assembly line of different. Like if you're doing a cable show, you go to like 6 cable places and you tell your idea and you tell your pitch and then they either buy it or they don't buy it, and sometimes 3 people buy it, and then you try to figure out who would maybe make this thing. So that is that's how it normally works. I've just loved that with The Path that I didn't do any of that. It was just like I wrote a script, I sent it, many people passed, and then this home said, we're starting a network, we want to start our network with your show, which had its ups and downs, but was an amazing opportunity without having to go through this process, because you often, I'll hand it over, but you get noted a lot along the way, and sometimes your idea shifts in ways that you didn't want it to go. So this was a much more ownership situation.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I don't know, I guess maybe we all have, I don't know, but there's been a lot of pitching, and personally, with the partners or producers I've been involved, we do an enormous amount of work before we even get into the room to pitch. No matter what, at the core of it is some sort of germ or a thing behind the idea that's sort of unique or exciting, sometimes maybe elusive, something that you might be able to work on over a long period of time. Because no matter what, I think the difficult thing about TV is the sustainability of it. How do you maintain a story over many years? And coming upon this sort of like conflict or some sort of paradoxical engine to the show that you can sort of work on year after year is the hardest thing to come up with. And in a weird way, when you're working with partners and producers, you're actually trying to approach that thing that the show's going to be about, that's going to be able to be talked about or almost resolved and unresolved on an episode-by-episode basis over a long period of time. And a lot of the work happens there. I do understand why pitching, I can understand the pitching part, because you're essentially walking into a room telling a story and they're actually trying to hire you as a storyteller. So I get that part. But when you go back to that thing, that flame that you've discovered that is your show, I agree with Jessica. Sometimes like you get noted, like there's a lot of forces trying to put out that flame. So part of the process is finding that flame, hanging on to the flame, doing all the work to keep that flame burning, and then you go into a process where everyone's trying to put it out.
So noted, which is actually fascinating. Noted, we're using that word. I'm not sure if you're all familiar. It's when you're being overloaded with a lot of notes. It's not actually a positive thing sometimes.
I talked to a guy who produced punk rock music for a while, and he said the hardest thing about producing punk rock music is you got to hang on to the punk, right? So like it's counterintuitive, but I think it's partially when you're pitching too, you're trying to hang on to that flame, that reason why, and that's probably why some of the best shows were, for the creators or the showrunners, were like personal and deep and something they had to tell, because in a way it's the most complete way for you to hang on to that thing.
Yeah, I think it's great what you guys said. And yeah, sometimes it's about figuring out, it's not just making sure that the story is something that, can exist over time, as opposed to, something more contained like a movie or something. But also, if you're lucky enough, for the thing to be realized, you have to make sure it's something that you want to live with for that amount of time. Because, a great show requires, I think, the creators and showrunners and everyone involved actually to be grappling with the thing, to keep it alive.
What do you bring into the pitch room? When you went in with your partners, what else are you bringing to the room?
It's weird because it's different than even pitching a movie, because you're actually pitching sort of the engine of a show. You're pitching the show's ability to not just the first 2 episodes, which are almost like the movie, but what's going to be the episode of the third year out? What's the episode in the middle of the 4th year? So it's a little different in a way, because you're pitching, sometimes it's thematic, it's like the thing you're working on, the main character, or a point of entry, the character of entry. the places that show lives, because TV shows sort of live in very distinct places by the nature of how they're produced and how they're thought of. So you're pitching that, which is like a landscape, and the characters that live within that landscape. And then you end up pitching sort of like a world. You know, you're pitching the world that you're going to invite the viewer into and to live with for a long time. And part of that has historical reasons, because TV came into your home first, now it comes essentially into your lap. So there's a lot of reasons that you like live in this world for. I mean, you know, people talk about TV characters on a first name basis. You know, it's like Tony. It's not Tony. You know, so like there's reasons for you. So you're presenting a world that the viewer and the buyer can live in for a long period of time.